particularly if you're in the very back, because I don't know if we have enough, if all the folders made it back there, but there's folders up here for you to take that have the general information about self-determination. So move up just a hair, just a little bit.
We want to see everybody's beautiful faces.
Yes.
Come on up. Come
on up. Because also people will come in late and then they won't have any place to sit. So this way there'll be a few chairs in the back. So everybody, welcome to this session on the journey into self-determination. My name's Michelle Smith, and the journey into self-determination is really a journey. It takes a while, but it's so worthwhile. But I want to do a little bit of housekeeping first. In your folder, you have a notebook from Pathway to Change. Some of you may have 2 flyers on self-determination, one in Spanish, one in English. Please share it with your Spanish-speaking friends. You have some papers in here that are the definitions and acronyms, because Don and I will throw out those acronyms, and at least you'll have something to refer to with and what we're talking about. We're going to try not to, but I can't promise because we get going. The other page is links for self-determination, so you can gather more information about it. And then the last page, there's one more. These are the codes and services.
You want to show them?
Yes. These are the codes and services, and we're going to talk about that later. But the services that your child may be eligible for once they have done some of the steps into self-determination. The last page this is really important, folks. If you could take time when you get home to do this survey by the State Council on Developmental Disabilities. I went to a meeting, only 3 other parents showed up. 2 other parents showed up. And they're planning in the next 5 years their initiatives and priorities and how they're going to spend their federal money. And so instead of them telling us what we need, if you guys fill out this survey, you can tell them what we need for how they can support us in our communities with the dollars that State Council gets. This is kind of a freebie, but it was like, I can't believe it that it isn't well known about we have a voice. We have more voice than we realize, and this is one place if you can do that survey. So that's a little bit of housekeeping. Dawn's going to introduce us and why we're here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dawn Purdy. I am the sibling of a regional center client. I have been working in self-determination since 2018. And my partner, Michelle Smith. You want to give a little bit about you and I'll keep going?
Sure. I am the mother of 6 children, 3 of which receive services from CVRC. I've been a physical therapist, seeing one of my babies from a long time ago. And now I'm an independent facilitator for self-determination, as well as Dawn's partner in this grant. I also have 2 grandchildren on the spectrum.
Perfect. So Michelle and I received a grant through the state, through DDS, Department of Developmental Services, a Service Access and Equity Grant. And it's 2 years. And with that grant, what we're hoping to do is educate families as much as possible on as many topics as possible, and topics that are relevant to the families, caregivers, and individuals who are receiving services. We want to make sure that we're getting information out as widespread as possible. So with that being said, we also are filming today, and we're filming mainly just us. We're not looking to get anybody in the audience that doesn't want to be, or for moving forward. But when we did focus groups in the beginning of our grant, we really found that it is hard for a lot of caregivers to get to physical locations to do workshops. It's a treat, honestly, to be able to get away from caregiving, and we know how hard that can be sometimes. And so we're filming to be able to put it on a YouTube platform so that it can reach families further. So just so we're a little bit of that. We are not employed by the regional center. We are not employed by DDS. We just work underneath this grant to educate families. So just to be sure that that's sort of disclaimer and clear. We're two individuals who started a joint venture to help our community. Okay.
So we start the journey of SDP. The Self-Determination Program, SDP, has been around for over 10 years. It was a law. Our federal government, actually all the states had to develop a plan that included more inclusive practices in across all agencies. And in it, they talked about you have to have a person-centered process. Our state was a little bit ahead of the game in developing the law, and the law is 4685-8. I always get the numbers all mixed up. And that gives this program a legal basis to exist. So this program is, has been authorized by our state, and it is supported by our federal government. And it's a program that takes some work. I will be totally honest with you. To do the program takes work by everybody, but my children actually got in the first year, all three of them, and I would never turn back, even though the 5-6 years have been rather interesting at times. But they have so much freedom. We can pay people at a reasonable rate, and so it's a program that has provided a lot of resources for the children that live with me.
Okay. All right, where do we start in our SDP journey? So it is a voluntary program. It's designed to meet the participants' goals and needs, provides personalized services. The services are developed through person-centered planning. What I like to talk a lot about is tools. I'm about tools. What tools do we have, right? And so one of the tools that we use in person-centered planning is called person-centered thinking. And person-centered thinking is when we're using more structured methods to understand and support each individual, their needs, in a way that respects their preferences, their goals, and their identities, right? Because so often, sometimes in the traditional system, voices get lost, goals get lost, preferences get lost, identities get lost. And so when we focus on that person, which is why it's called person-centered, we can stay true to what that individual wants and needs.
So this is where it gets a little confusing. Self-determination is under our regional center. They are part of the team. But there's the traditional services, and it's almost like they are two different countries. So there's traditional regional center, and there is SDP. In order to be eligible for SDP, you have to be a regional center client. You have to attend the orientation, which is about 2 hours. Our regional center has one once a month. And you have to choose a financial management service or an FMS, which we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Any age person can participate in SDP. When they're under 3, there's a few more rules that they may not be eligible, but over 3, anybody could participate in SDP. If you live in a licensed facility but are planning to move out, you could go into SDP. And a licensed facility would be like a group home or a hospital type of setting.
Who is on the team? I'm all about teams because it's what it takes, dream team, right? What it takes to make it work. So for your team, typically, or the individual's team, is family, friends, your CVRC service coordinator. They usually guide through the regional center process. Independent facilitators, which is what Michelle and I both do, who guide you through the outside processes, and the FMS, which is the financial management service. and they're the ones who handle, and we'll talk more about them in just a minute, but they handle a lot of the actual finances.
They're the bank.
They're the bank. That's the best way to put it. Now, a lot of people will say, okay, well, family, friends, what does that look like? That can be people that are involved in your loved one's life. That could be somebody at church, right? Maybe they're in choir and the church director has been amazing with them and has really taken to them. That person can be a part of their team. How do we find out that they're a part of their team? Where do they fit? And so get creative with that piece, because I have a lot of families that come to me and they're like, I don't know who to put on my child's team, or I don't know who my child would want to be on their team. Start to look at what they're involved in, right? Outside of your immediate circle, what else are they involved in? Okay, so really quick notes on those. IF, the independent facilitator, is not a mandatory team member, but highly recommended. And the best way to put that is if you're on a plane, you want to have a pilot, right? And it's the same for SDP. In my personal opinion, having a facilitator is the pilot. Or captain, if you like that better, ship, right? Okay, perfect. On your team.
So an independent facilitator, I've been one for a long time. I am not looking for new clients. I am booked. But there's IF's independent facilitators out in the community. I actually have 2 that I am mentoring right now. We need to build the community of independent facilitators to help guide along the way. The initial getting into SDP, Regional Center pays. DDS has set it up, Department of Developmental Service has set it up that Regional Center will pay us to help somebody get into the program. Once they're in the program, that comes out of your child's spending plan, and we'll get to that eventually. And I want to reiterate that IF is not a mandatory position. It's totally voluntary. And in fact, we kind of, amongst us IFs, we talk together about, okay, you do my person-centered plan for my child, because many of us have children. We have lived experience with children that are in self-determination. IFs should have training in the policy and processes of self-determination. And that's really hard because they're not certified. Our state is working to certify, to get a program where we are certified. But it's always good to look for an IF that has a little bit of experience, or ask them who's mentoring them. Because there's several people I know being mentored by various experienced IFs in town, that if they're mentoring them, it's kind of like, okay, sign me up, I'm good. So anyhow, they will help with the person-centered planning process, the budget, the spending plan, and onboarding.
Okay, guides along the way. Financial management system. So that's what we talked about a little bit, just tapped on it for a minute. But they handle the spending plan that's created to meet the needs of the person served. They spend time, you should spend time on the DDS website looking at which FMS will best meet your needs. Now, we say that, and I truly mean this, do your homework when you're going into selecting an FMS, because you need to build a relationship with them, in that they're making sure that staff is helping get paid. They're helping with onboarding staff, right? Making sure that you get fingerprinting done, and they're helping you with those pieces. So you really need to make sure that you're comfortable in the selection that you've made for your FMS. There are different models and in the SDP world, and you'll also be able to see those when you've researched those FMSs.
So just to let you know that this is only an hour presentation, there's a lot more depth to some of the topics in self-determination. You're getting the frosting on the top.
You're getting the Cliff Notes version.
Yes.
Because Michelle and I could sit up here and talk for hours. So
Yes.
You're getting the Cliff Notes, but keep if your questions come up along the way, just keep them and we'll get to them for sure.
Another guide along the way is the whole person-centered planning process, because it's beginning to reframe how you're looking at your child, your loved one. And so we explore the strengths, abilities, talents of the person. We we use different tools, identify what's important to and what's important for. Important to is the person's voice. Important for gets to be the team's voice. So for example, if somebody has seizures, it would be important for that they got their seizure medicine. And maybe alcohol isn't a good mix with the seizure medicine. I had another situation where dental, it was important to take care of her teeth. But then the family added, and she needs antibiotics before she goes to the dentist. So that important to, important for is really important. And clarifies maybe if there's behaviors that certain things work with and certain things don't work with. So clarifying what works and what doesn't work. And outlines the goals and dreams. And this is really important because the goals and dreams and the needs drive the services that we can ask for regional center. So this is like several conversations that you may have I may have as an independent facilitator with the family and the person, even if the person's nonverbal, because a lot of times I can tell when somebody likes something or they don't like something, and that is a communication response for me. So once we do the person-centered plan, we develop what the service request would be. We have a calendar, and we have what goals or tasks and activities that we need to do to support the goals. So when we do the initial person-centered plan, and in my case, I also add some job description issues. It's usually about 20 pages or so. Some people are bigger and some people are longer, and it includes pictures. It's personalized. It really, like, the person is basically at the head of the table when we do a person-centered plan. And again, it's over several conversations.
I want to just add to what Michelle said too, that these can be very simple. The person-centered plan can be very simple, or it can be very detailed. It's all about the individual, right? It's to meet their needs. And so I'll get some families that'll come to me and say, Dawn, I don't even know what type of verbiage to use or what goals to list, but I can tell you as a human being, as a mom, as a dad, this is what I need to see for my child. Or the individual comes to me and they'll say, this is what I want and or need. And so that's where, as a facilitator, we can come in and say, okay, you are having issues with opening and closing your water bottle, or zippering a zipper, or doing buttons. Okay, well, let's set a goal for that. We may need some OT, right? Some occupational therapy. So let's set a goal for that. Then we can translate that, and we'll explain how later. But just, they can be very simple or they can be more complex. But no matter what, they're all about the individual and what their wants and needs are and how we meet those. Okay.
I already did it.
Oh, you did it. Oh, you're one step ahead of me. Party time. Okay, so this is probably our favorite part because the person-centered planning can seem very heavy. And so this, because you're really digging into strengths, maybe some things that we need help with, it can be a little heavier. So the party time is a lot of fun. And it can be celebrated in different ways. I have some families that truly invite aunts, uncles, and it's amazing. It's incredible. People from school, teachers, and it's a big celebration. And the individual in that specific case, she loves the attention, right? Loves it. But then I have others that they're like, I just want to keep it really simple. I just want it to be me and mom. Great. Whatever it is, we're going to celebrate that we've just drawn out this plan for moving forward in your future, right? So either way, it can be little, big, but it's all about the individual and how they want to celebrate.
One of the most effective things for people that are out of town, because we also can do a hybrid Zoom, but to ask them to write what they see, email you, answer some questions and email you. I have seen some touching responses. And I just want to warn you dads that every celebration that I've been to, dad always cries.
There's tears. There's tears, but they're happy tears. Yes,
because it's just really special to be able to celebrate somebody. And we don't work, if something comes up that's unexpected, we don't fix them. We just talk about goals, strengths, and what's next.
I always say that's one of my favorite tools. Thank you for bringing that up, Michelle. To get the feedback, right, from the people in their life. I love doing that because how often do our children get responses from whomever's in their life, whether it's in the educational system, whether it's at home, wherever it is, all the things they can't do, right? And so for this very shining moment, they get to hear the great things about them and what everybody else thinks about them. And I can't tell you the look on most of their faces and how they beam for the rest of the day after hearing all the good things about themselves. It's worth its weight in gold.
And then they have something tangible to hang on when we're done too, some format. And it can vary what that will look like. The next slide is basically we get the person-centered plan done, and then it's kind of a breather for us in a sense, because that person-centered plan then goes to regional center, and we will then need to have some meetings to talk about the budget, what requests, because from the person-centered plan, we also have a calendar where we look at where it is that somebody may need more support. Some of you may only have 15 hours of respite, but when we start doing a person-centered plan and we see that, hey, mom and dad are also taking care of grandma and grandpa, they need some extra respite. We have a 17, 18-year-old that does not want to go to the movies with mom and dad all the time. They want to go with the PA. So we get that all down on paper, goes to regional center, and it trickles up and down through the program manager and the different committees to authorize whatever it is that we've requested, or come back for more information, or say that, oh, you have to use a generic service for this, because they all of our requests, if a generic service like education, IHSS, that sort of thing, insurance can pay for it, then they are the payer of first resort, while regional center is the payer of last resort. So it will go through the process, and then regional center should, after we've met with them, they're going to shoot back a budget of what they will pay for, and we will review that budget and then decide, okay, that's great, or no, there's a few things that we need to revisit. So this is a kind of a back and forth time, and then by the time we're done, we should have a budget.
And you just covered pretty much my slide. Thanks, Michelle. No, but like she said, this is where you really pull out all the needs. And at this time, you will have received a budget back from the regional center. What I say with the budget is and I'll repeat this in a minute, but just to truly look it over with a fine-tooth comb. And we'll give you an example and sort of why. But to me, that's really important that you make sure that you're looking over the budget when it comes back. Now that budget too, if we didn't already mention it, is the services that would have been authorized in traditional services. So if you're not an SDP already, you're probably receiving what we call traditional services. And so what you would receive, that budget is gonna look like those traditional services, okay? And so we'll explain that in just a minute. But those are things like Michelle listed, the verbiage is like respite or personal attendant or ILS, independent living services. There's different
day program.
Yes, adult
Supportive.
Day program. Yes. So that's what you're going to see under the budget for the traditional system. Okay.
So next, we have from the budget, we'll develop a spending plan, and there's another slide to support this. But we go from the budget, we move the money from the budget to a spending plan. And why do we have to have two separate ones? Because that's the way it works in this state. Our state is heading towards a generic spending plan template for all 21 regional centers. So all 21 regional centers do this differently, just letting you know. But we'll have the money that's on the budget moves to what's called the spending plan. And then we get to creatively work on the staff that you may want to hire, what are their job descriptions. You have to send it to the FMS that you've chosen. They give you directions on how to onboard into their services. And all the FMSs have different ways of doing their onboarding process. So you should have decided on an FMS by now, because they're going to start getting your paperwork from Regional Center, from your IF, or from yourself to support your services in self-determination.
Perfect. And I wanted to give an example just in case you can't think of maybe who your FMS is. So in SDP, they're actually in both. If you've heard the name, there's one called Aviana, and so they're in traditional and they're in self-determination. There's one I think that's still around, they may have changed their name, was Maxim. That's under the traditional services. So hopefully that gives you an example. I'm very much so, I need examples for my brain to process it. So when you hear us talk about an FMS, it's who's paying out your staff. So hopefully that makes sense.
Many of you may have Aviana and you think, oh, I'm already in Aviana. Well, they have firewalled their traditional services and their SDP services. So you will reapply with Aviana, which isn't hard. But it's actually lovely because you're kind of familiar with how they work, but they don't mix. Mm-hmm. They don't mingle.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So I'm gonna just go through a little bit and hopefully it makes sense. And if it doesn't, just stop me and put your hand up and say, give me another example. So this is your budget. This is the services that your child needs in traditional terms, okay? So they're gonna give you a service code. You see it on the far left. They're gonna give you a service code. Then they give you a description. And these were some of the traditional terms that they were using. Personal attendant. Personal attendant is typically someone who's going to assist your child in different things that they may need. It could be things within the home that they need help with. It could be things outside of the home that they need help with. And so personal attendant. Respite is when everybody gets a break, right? And so it kind of goes through and it gives you the different descriptions. So from there, it gives you the amount paid per month, but you see this section here that says notes and goals. And so this is why it's so important to get the needs and the goals sorted out. Because then you can put in the description, these hours are needed. So let's say we have an individual who needs support at home with cleaning their room, okay? We're over 18, don't want mom and dad to help us clean our bedroom. Let's find somebody else, okay? And so they would go and say, I need a personal assistant to help me with things in my home. We would put that in their goals. And that's once we've gone through their hours and seen, okay, I need help at least once a week. So we figure that out. And that's where it would go, is in the notes and goals, is how many hours are needed and sort of what it's needed for. You don't have to give every specific of what it's needed for, like brush my teeth or, do my laundry. It doesn't have to be all those specifics. It can be general, but enough so that you can get across, this is the need and this is why we attach this goal to it. And then it has a section for frequency. So how often? And so some services, like you can see the FMS, it's monthly. Some of them you can see there's so many hours per month, right? Or there's a category under social recreation, which has come back, which is wonderful, where you can get certain things paid for, like break the barriers or swimming or horse therapy, good dirt pottery. There's a list of social rec activities that you can get through our regional center. And so that's there, but you can see it says 3 months only. And so maybe that activity is only 3 months. And so they're just making sure it's clear to everybody, it's 3 months. And so then you'll get a total. And then from this total is where we take and we get creative in our spending plan.
Right.
But look this over with care, because I can tell you, there's families I've supported that, and we're human. A computer is not doing this, it's a human behind it, and it's your regional center service coordinator. We're human, people make mistakes, so look it over with a fine tooth comb, because I have had some come back that needed adjustments, and that's okay, but we need to catch it ahead of time if we can. There we go.
So this is the version of a spending plan. We don't have the numbers on it, but the service codes are different that describe a different type of service. So PA is no longer PA, it's community living coach. Social rec is no longer social rec, but rather community integration. There's a code for IF, there's a code for mileage. This is where people get confused. And some of you may say, I've never even heard of this before. Well, there's a really good chance that your regional center service coordinator hasn't told you about self-determination because it's really hard on them. It's a lot of work. But you know what? I'm going to tell you over and over again, it is so worth it once you're in it and moving through it. So we have this spending plan, and I'm going to tell you I've made mistakes. The spending plan, because I do the spending plan. The service coordinator doesn't do it. And I've made some whoppers. And luckily I have a good relationship with the service coordinator, so they fixed them for me or told me, Michelle. So we put in like how much we want to pay somebody, how many hours per month that we want to pay them, or we want them in our homes. So this is where the names of your staff go. So this is what a spending plan would look like. So when you transfer over that amount from the budget, you can be creative. But there are certain things on there. If you've said that you want break the barriers, you better put break the barriers on here. Because that's what you told Regional Center your child needed or they asked for. If they've asked for something, put it on there. The first year, I put a whole bunch of stuff on there. But I don't put it for the full year. I may put it only for 3 months. If they've expressed a lot of interest, we're going to do short stuff, short classes, amount of classes. But like my son EJ loves good dirt pottery. He loves good dirt. And in fact, they're doing something in Morro Bay and shipping some of his pieces to Morro Bay. So he does it every month. But some people, they may try good dirt and say, I don't want to touch that clay, and I'm done in a month. So you can move money around. You are not stuck with where your money is. But if you told Regional Center this is a need, then it should show up here someplace on the spending plan. ABA services, if that's something that Regional Center, after the generic services have been tried, then you should have an ABA company on there. So you're basically looking at the amount. The other thing in self-determination, I have to say this out loud because everybody gets confused, and I usually have to say it 4 times, is that respite and your personal assistant, we combine them. We do not put respite on here. You can use your community living coach for respite. If we put respite on here, they have to be CPR certified, they have to have first aid, and they can't spend the night. I said that doesn't work for me. So we just combine it into one big category with whoever you've hired, your staff. And they like to have the staff's names, but you don't have to put the staff's name down. But this is a spending plan.
Okay. So adding to the journey, we have staff. So one of my favorite pieces about self-determination is that you get to choose staff yourself, right? In the traditional system, there's typically a list, right? A list of maybe providers, service providers, whether that's a company, and then they send you out individuals, and it's kind of like, well, hopefully they work out. In self-determination, you get to pick and choose. The individual gets to pick and choose who they want to support them, who they want as staff. I think for a lot of families, I know for me specifically, hiring caregivers is difficult. I need to be able to trust the individual because I'm trusting you with someone who at times can be vulnerable. And I'm speaking about my sibling, but even the individuals that I support, I have to be able to trust you. We have to trust you. So for me, hiring on staff is extremely important, and being able to have choice in that staff is even more important. I also think the beauty, because I know I'm a caregiver as well, I know how taxing it can be at times, both physically and emotionally. And in self-determination, we get to select the rate of pay. So we get to choose how much we are paying our staff. Now, do we go wild and pay large amounts for, maybe a simple service? No. but we do get to pay over minimum wage, which can be enticing or helpful to bring on quality staff. Okay, I live in a rural area. I support individuals in a rural area. I cannot pay someone minimum wage to drive 45 minutes up the hill to come and support individuals there. It'd be really difficult to find somebody to do that. And so flexibility in staff, bringing them on at a better rate can truly help. The rates actually now, that was a piece I was gonna mention. So for the first time ever, the rates for these services has now become public information. It has, I know, it has never, and that may not totally resonate yet, but let me give you an example. So for like personal attendant that we listed before, for respite that we listed before, when we started self-determination, SIFs kind of talked and said, oh, you know, I'm supporting this individual, they're getting X amount, let's just say $20 for respite an hour, and somebody else might have been getting 30, and we're both looking at each other going, what's happening? Why is that different? That has all changed now. So it has now been listed. It is at dds.ca.gov. You can see for each regional center the codes that are provided, the services that are provided, and their rate of pay. So now there's transparency, right? Which is a huge thing for our community. And so that was one thing I wanted to mention. The other thing is for staffing, some families come into it, and yes, you can, one I see as a pro, you can hire a parent in SDP as long as the child is over 18 years old. The thing is, we have some families that maybe take that and say, okay, great, I'm gonna work full-time. It's really not meant for a parent to come in and work full-time. If there's a specific role for that parent, that's great. But you also wanna think like, we have to broaden our circle, and we want to bring in staff that's going to support the child. I had a family emergency with my own family this year that really shook us and really made us look at the entire circle of support for my sibling and her staffing and who would be there if my mom, who is her primary caregiver, could not, right? And so parents, I think in the beginning, you know, thought, oh, I'll take this on as my full-time job, and that's not really the intention or the goal of it. Yes, be there, be involved. And you can be paid if your child's over 18, but play a specific role and hire out staff to come in to support your child.
This is an area, the reason why we're emphasizing it is DDS is looking at this area around the state. Evidently it's being abused. So I'm gathering information of why, yes, parents and family members should be able to be paid, or why not. And I think one of the things is if you have a specific role that you're helping your child with, then that helps us when it comes time, because there are directives that come out around this program that we're expecting some to come in the next 6 months or so, because we're hearing they're not happy with parents being care providers. But I'm going to tell you, I have many people on, and probably everybody that I work with, there is a parent care provider, because we all fill in the blank, you know? And one of the things is about, when we build a person-centered plan, we're also, and this has happened in statewide, where some of you might have had your IPP this year, and they asked you, what are your emergency plans, and what are your plans when you're no longer around, when you take your eternal vacation? And so that whole succession planning, and they've been kind of hard on parents behind the scenes, because, you know, we parents don't want to think about, you know, when we're no longer there, because it's a lot of things. And now we're thinking about it. And so now we begin to see that, okay, if I'm not here, who's going to do this? We want to build those services so that they don't need us. Thank you very much.
Oh, wait, did I go too far? I went too far. There we go.
So when you get into SDP, you're only halfway there, but you're almost there, because you have to learn and make sure, like, your staff are onboarded, they know how to use the portal. They all have to do EVV, electronic verification visits, in their phone or whatever. That all has to be done. Understanding how to submit invoices, because the FMSs won't allow businesses to submit invoices. They have the invoices for services like paying for a semester of BTB has to come through me or the parent. Me as an IF or the parent. And once you get the hang of all of this, it becomes very rote. I get up Sunday mornings and I authorize my kids' hours of staff that have come in. You just get into a routine. You need to check the monthly finance report, because the FMSs are mandated to send you how much money you spent, where's it, what staff, what is staff billed for the month. So you get these monthly reports, so you keep up with your what's in your spending plan. Because once you hit zero, Regional Center doesn't add more money. You're done for the year. I have only had a couple of people where we got short on money, and there was just a lot of changes, and we were able to work it out. But there's things that it'll take about a month, 6 weeks to get it all ironed out where you feel like it's running smoothly, and then it's pretty much skateboard.
Well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm watching time because I want to allow for Q&A. So SDP, transition to your self-determined life, continue to learn the process and the policy of SDP, be ready to pivot because there are changes. That's the reality.
All the time.
I get families, since 2018 I've been supporting families through it, and I get families that are like, I've heard it's too much work, I'm not up for that. The reality is, as a special needs parent, sibling, caregiver, the individuals themselves, we're resilient. Sorry, we are. And change comes and we can take it, okay? It's a matter of when you're ready to commit, okay? So I know it's difficult, I've seen it, but I also have seen the beauty in it, and I have seen incredible cases of things that the individuals and the families couldn't have ever dreamed of happen. And that to me in itself is worth it.
Oh, these are some of our favorites. So in the middle, this is, I'm going to tell on myself. This is my youngest daughter with Claire. Claire came to me, they were in high school together, and Claire came to me and said, can I take Maddie to camp to work this summer? Sure. Well, it turns out a couple of weeks, what kind of mother am I? I found out they were going to Arizona. I thought she was going to above Sacramento. And so I'm like, how is she going to get there? She went with Claire and 4 other UCLA students and was there for 3 weeks without me. And if you saw the pictures of her with all the staff, she was like staff because she worked. It was amazing. And what it taught me, my daughter can do more than even I think. So I had a learning curve there with my own daughter and trusting. And Claire wasn't even paid, because then I found out that when somebody goes out of state, you can't pay their support person. So anyhow, I had a really big lesson this summer.
Constantly changing. We're resilient, okay? I was with her on a meeting when she realized it was out of state, and the look on her face, I don't think I'll ever forget. But also the look on Maddie's face when she got to go be with peers was incredible. So, and just to point out, because I am watching time, but like some of these specifically, Arturo started a cookie baking business. I got to be a part of his journey. Incredible. His cookies are amazing. I get myself in trouble because I have celiacs, and he's here, so go get some, but I will still eat his, I just pay for it. But they're amazing, so get some cookies. And Dominic, who learned how to drive, incredible story. Works, does archery, something he wanted to as a mountain boy, and it's all been possible through SDP. Like, incredible stories. We have lists and could go on forever, but things that families and the individuals never imagined happened through this program. Yeah.
Yes. Patrick has severe disabilities, but he gets to go every other weekend to his brother's house in Visalia. And let me tell you, don't let the door hit him. He cannot wait to get out of the house. And again, this is an example of a family that supports him, but he also has some medical needs, so we don't have nursing, so we need the family. But he gets to leave. It's like he wouldn't have normally gotten to leave. And Miss Deandra, do you want to talk about what Gemma did?
Recently, Times Square, she was featured in New York on the Free Street for National Down Syndrome Society.
So cool. She's a rock star.
And Mr. Bobby is somebody that lives rurally, and he now comes into Fresno with his staff. He's going to GB3, he's going to Core 3, he's going to BTB. He's not going to Core 3 yet. He's going to BTB, and he's doing pottery. Before he was at home because of the location, but now out he goes. And his mother's no longer allowed in his bedroom.
So success stories, we could go on for days. Yes, it's hard, and you all have that look on your face, the overwhelm, and I've seen it, I've been there, but the success stories, I promise you, outweigh anything and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna go over these really fast because I really want time for Q&A. Principles along the way for SDP, freedom. One of my favorites, it's all about their right to choose when, where, with whom, how they do what they do. It's their choice, right?
Why are we emphasizing these? Because these are actually written in the law. And so, anyhow, the next one is authority. And authority is the principle of having some control over your spending plan money.
The next is support. So I mentioned this a little bit before, but again, in the traditional system, and I'm not knocking the traditional system, I still support individuals in the traditional system,
Yes.
but typically in that system, it is much more difficult for them to choose who supports them. SDP allows that freedom.
The next one is responsibility. And this is a hard one because I talked about a couple families ran out of money, or my goodness, I'm out of hours. But that's where you got to pay attention to what you're spending your money on. Remember, these are federal dollars, and you want to make sure that you are legal, and if people are supposed to be providing services, they better be providing services, sort of thing. You need to watch your budget or your spending plan report.
The next one is confirmation, and this is one of my favorites. Nothing about me without me. And I can tell you myself, I call it getting a slice of humble pie constantly, right? Because we assume often that certain things are needed, and we're humbled by a lot of the individuals that we support, my sibling included, that that's not always what they want or how they want it to be. And so really listening and confirming that their choices are their choices and they will be respected.
And our last couple of slides, I just want to encourage you that, yes, it's a journey, but it's so worth it, and you can do it.